I've been working out here in the shop today, and I stopped earlier to take a lunch break. And while I was eating lunch, I was just scrolling through, watching a few random videos, and I watched three in particular that unrelated random videos. But then I realized they were very much related, and in a very profound way. And the first one was by the Uneducated Economist. And I'm going to leave links below in the description to all three videos. But Uneducated Economist, I like his channel, watch him pretty regular, and think of it as blue collar economics. I like his insight on stuff. He was talking about homelessness, the problem of homelessness, and he got into some interesting things. And one of the things he mentioned was basically a supply problem. So there's just not enough houses, therefore houses are overpriced. And of course, there's other issues, addiction, mental illness, that type of stuff. But he was talking about the things they're doing to fix the homeless problem aren't addressing the root cause of homelessness. And he said something else there that just really struck me. He mentioned here in the U.S. anyway, we used to be a manufacturing nation. We made stuff. As a result, people here had skills, valuable skills, that could make products of value that could be sold for money and hence keep the economy going and so forth. And our forefathers, they could have built their own house if need be because they had skills. All right, how many of us now have the skills needed to build a house? Okay, and it's homelessness. You're forgetting the addiction and mental illness. And keep in mind, all of us are just one serious medical issue away from bankruptcy. Yeah, your insurance might cover most of it, maybe. Depends on what it is. We're one major medical issue away from bankruptcy, most of us. Okay, so a lot of people that are homeless are just found themselves there just through bad luck. I mean, you know, they did what everybody else did, got up to here in debt, something happened, a few bad things happened in their life, all of a sudden they're on the street. Okay, it can happen that easy. Okay, if those people had the right skills, would they be homeless? And keep in mind the difference between a person that makes $100,000 a year and a person that's just flat broke and, you know, assuming no addiction issues or mental illness, the difference is generally skills. All right, the person that's making $100,000 a year, they're making that because they have some skills that are in demand. Okay, so that's just the importance of skills, but you know, with the right skills, could we ever be homeless, assuming we had a little piece of land, if we had the skills to go build a house? All right, and no, you don't have to pay for lumber. If you got trees on the land, those trees make boards, boards make houses, logs, log cabin. Anyway, okay, so I thought that just struck me. And then the next video, it was, as far as I know, I've never watched this channel before, but it's Handyman Business. The guy was a handyman, he's done construction and all that. And the title of the video, I think, was, I won't work for the middle class anymore. Okay, and in that video, he talked about inflation and how wages for the middle class have not kept up with inflation. He used himself as an example, and I think he said in 2004, he had a degree in construction management, and he went to work making $55,000 a year. All right, just that for inflation, and that $55,000 then would be, I think he estimated it at $98,000 a year now. And he said nobody in that industry starts out now making $98,000 a year. All right, so almost nobody's pay has kept up with inflation. As a result, middle class generally just, they can't pay well for his type of services because they just don't have the money to pay it. So he specifically and intentionally looks for wealthy clients, upper class, for his clientele. All right, that's the only people he goes after because they can afford to pay for his services so that he can make a decent living. Okay, interesting. And finally, the last video, and I don't remember the channel, but again, it'll be in the link below. But name of the video was the inequality none of us are talking about. And he was talking about the inequality between mega cities and then the surrounding rural areas, smaller towns and cities within a country. Okay, a great example, New York City. You can go to New York City and make a lot of money. Cost of living is expensive, but you can make a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunities. You go into some of the rural areas in New York State, and yes, there are rural areas, very rural areas in New York State. There's not hardly any opportunities there. So you've got a growing inequality between the large mega city of New York versus the surrounding small communities in the rural areas. Well, that's all over the world. Okay, that isn't just New York, that's LA, that's San Francisco, he used Tokyo as an example, and his home city of Sydney. Okay, and one of the things he mentioned, or two of the things, one was it can be very difficult for someone from a poor rural area to ever save up enough money to be able to move to a mega city and be able to buy a home or anything like that, get established. And that if you were to leave a mega city to go to a rural area for lower cost of living, to raise a family or something like that, you might not be able to move back. And a good example he used was housing prices. Okay, and he talked about Sydney, but I think an even better example is San Francisco. Okay, so someone that bought a house in San Francisco in 1980s, 90s, yeah, they paid a lot of money for the house, but nothing like you would pay for the price of a house in San Francisco now. Okay, well, a lot of other smaller, more rural, poorer communities, the price of housing didn't go up like that. So if you left the big city, you sold your big house that you saved up enough money to be able to buy at whatever price, you sold it, moved to a small community, raised a family, whatever. 10 years from now, you're not going to be able to sell your house in that small community and go to the big city and buy a house. Okay, your house isn't going to go up at the same rate in those cities, which you might could in San Francisco because it appears to be collapsing right now. Different subject, but you get the point though. Okay, well, now we're fixing to tie all this together in what I think is an extremely interesting way. Robert Cantillon, or probably Robert, he's French, 18th century French philosopher and banker. He developed a theory, the Cantillon effect. And there's two parts of this theory that are really interesting, and shout out to the uneducated economist because he's where I first heard about this, but it describes so much of what we're seeing in the U.S. right now and most Western nations. When new money comes into a system, people at the top get to spend that money at its face value. And then as it works its way through the system, it becomes worth less and less. And then those at the bottom, it's worth the least amount when it gets to them. Inflation. Okay, but inflation isn't just that money becomes worth less. It becomes worth less the further away you are from the new money being printed. Okay, so those people working for the government's first access, they're going to pay out money. Banks, especially with the quantitative easing, people that can borrow large sums of money from the banks with no interest, have access to that, they get to spend it at face value and so forth. And then by the time it gets to the bottom, it's just not worth a lot. Okay, the other really interesting part of that theory, those that have access to that money are, in the case of the U.S., most of us, we're going to start buying luxury items and we're going to buy imports. Because with so much new money coming in, things get more expensive here. Imports are cheaper, we're going to buy the imports. All right, well, that drives out domestic manufacturing. And look at the U.S. Our domestic manufacturing is almost non-existent now, and We import almost everything. Okay, so that is so interesting that you can see a theory from the 1700s just playing out in real time in the U.S. or in recent history. Okay, so that drives out domestic manufacturing, but it also drives out the people, because those at the bottom, they lose their jobs, they find themselves in poverty. They eventually just have to leave to go somewhere else to make a living. Okay, great example again, San Francisco. All right, 1980s, San Francisco's a normal American city. It's doing okay, but all of a sudden you get the tech boom, Silicon Valley, price of everything just keeps going up and up and up. It forced out domestic manufacturing. So if you weren't working for a tech company, eventually you got forced out. The average person in San Francisco in 1980 could have worked an average job and paid for a house in town. How many people now could work an average job in San Francisco and even pay the property taxes on the house? Because the houses have gone up in value so much because of the tech industry and all of the new money that brought into that area. Okay, well, and it keeps going like that, though, forcing people out and into poverty until the new money stops coming in, and then the whole thing collapses into poverty. All right, which that's how it ends. Okay. When that happens here in the U.S., that'll probably be when the dollar loses its reserve currency status. And it's going to at some point. Who knows when, but it's going to. And keep in mind, our government right now is $32 trillion in debt. Okay, so yeah, bad things could happen to our currency anytime. Okay, and we don't manufacture anything. Okay, well, that's something I've just been scratching my head on for a while. And it occurred to me, going back to skills. If you had the right skills, do you ever end up in poverty? Okay, right now, my tool cabinet behind me. This would be very expensive if you had to purchase this. If you were to pay someone to build this for you, you would pay a lot for it. You can't see all the details, but this is solid wood, it's cedar, cypress floating panels, hand-cut dovetails. All of the corners of the cabinet are dovetailed together. This is a very nice cabinet. I wouldn't be able to afford it if I was to pay someone to make this. Thankfully, I had the skills to build this. Okay, the cedar, I picked up the cedar for next to nothing from a local sawmill. It was leftovers from other jobs, and it was nice quality cedar. I had the skills. I turned it into something valuable. Okay, and keep in mind, money's useless. Money's just paper with ink on it. What makes money, the reason we all want it is because of the things we can buy with money. Okay, so we don't want money in life, we want wealth. We want the nice things that money buys. If you can build those nice things, if you have the skills to make those nice things, are you ever really poor? Okay, I'm making drawers right now for my cabinet here. These are going to turn out pretty nice. I've got hand-cut dovetails on the corners, it's solid wood. This is going to be a quality drawer when I'm done. And I know that ain't much set of drawers for shop cabinet. It's going to be a nice set of shop cabinets when I'm done. That if you were to go out and buy these, it would be expensive, very expensive. This isn't the plastic disposable stuff you get from Lowe's. Okay, and these drawers aren't the plastic disposable. These will last 100 years or more. Okay, so if you can grow food to avoid the impacts of inflation, you've got to be able to afford some property. All right, but if you have some land and some skills, are you ever really going to be in poverty? Anyway, that's just something I was thinking about, and the importance of skills and having the right skills and developing the right skills. And we need tools also. But I'm doing all of this with hand tools. Hand tools are much more expensive now than they used to be. And this is something so many don't realize. Real things now are expensive. And when I say real things, I mean quality things made out of real materials. This hand plane, you're going to pay for this. Now, 60 years ago, these were cheap. Not cheap anymore. All right. The advancements we've made in the last 50 years have been in plastics and electronics. And if you ain't buying plastics and electronics, then you're going to pay a lot more for it than it used to cost. Okay, but once you have the tools, and keep in mind that these tools are not complicated. They're just made out of real materials and they're quality. This is dovetail saw. I don't know how long these have been around. Hundreds of years. My workbench right here. Again, another thing that is this is quality, and you would pay dearly for this if you were to get someone to make this for you. Okay, I've got double tenons for the legs, and all a tenon is you take a piece of wood and you cut out the side so that there's a thin piece sticking up. That's a tenon, and then you cut a hole in another piece of wood, you stick them together, and that's a mortise. That's joinery right there, or a form of it. I've got double tenons on my workbench here, so there's two of these sticking up into the bottom of this bench to hold the legs to the top. Double tenons were used in the Bible to make the Ark of the Covenant. Think about that. That's how far back this goes. That's how far back these tools go. The hand planes used to be made out of wood, but this goes back to ancient Rome. Chisels. I mean, I have no doubt that they had a lot of chisels during the Bronze Age. That's how far back this goes. This is nothing new or nothing complicated. Been around forever. And people use these tools to make really nice stuff. Go look at antique furniture from the 17 and 1800s. Go type in, do a search on Chippendale. Really nice stuff. I don't think we have the quality now that they had then in that type of furniture. Now, don't get me wrong, the average peasant wasn't buying a Chippendale furniture, but in many ways they had nicer stuff then, or at least a lot more craftsmanship went into it. But you take that however many thousands of dollars for that piece of furniture. Well, if you have the right skills, you can have that piece of furniture because you can make it yourself. The tools they used to make that, they're still here. They never went anywhere. Most of us don't have the skills now. So what I just said, with the right skills, if we possess those skills, are we ever truly in poverty? And that's going to be, keep that in mind and think about that over the next few years as you hear more and more and more about all of the disruptions that are going to come from AI. Okay, that's going to be they say it's going to be a game changer. I'm assuming it is because I heard that about the internet when it first came out. And it was a game changer. It took quite a few years, but eventually it was. So I'm assuming the AI is going to be a game changer as well. A lot of you now, a lot of your skills are suddenly going to be obsolete due to AI. Okay, you're going to need new skills. Okay, and depending on what happens, U.S. currency, everything else going on, having skills to make stuff like this truly might mean the difference between living in poverty or living in luxury. And with all of the information we have now, with all of the resources we have now, even just an average individual like myself, there really isn't any excuse for any of us not to be living in luxury. We can all learn how to make this type of stuff, and we can all get these basic, simple tools. Just some stuff to think about. Okay, I know I rambled on a lot just then. I do that, but I'm just now connecting all the dots and figuring this out myself. I had a few of the pieces of this puzzle put together, but then I go watch 3 seemingly unrelated videos in a row like that. A few more pieces fall in place, and it just, myself, I'm getting a clearer picture of what's going on and where things are going. Okay, and yeah, I think skills, developing skills, reacquiring lost skills, I think that I can't begin to say how important I think that's going to be in the very near future. And AI can take away a lot of things, but it can't do hand-cut dovetails. God bless and have a great day.